Waiters, what Valentine Day disasters have you witnessed? Part 2. I served at a Japanese hibachi restaurant and once had a couple come and the dude dumps her after the meal. She then gets up and throws up a trail probably a good 20 feet as she runs to the bathroom. The dude got up and left the girl and I was left to clean the mess. I walked up to a table and was about to drop off the bill. Caught the end of it's over. Guy looked at me dead in the eye and said to split that fucking check. Right now. Not a waiter. But I'm a busier at a fine dining restaurant. We close at 10 on weekdays and this couple comes in at 9:30 and orders the $280/person 12-course tasting menu. Older guy and very attractive mid-30s woman. They look very wealthy, just a guess. I already know I'm going to be there for a long time, and sure enough midnight rolls around and they are still there. The only ones in the restaurant. They already got their dessert and are not touching it. They were bickering all night and sitting side by side, which was odd. And you could tell by looking at them that things were not going well and they were very passive-aggressive towards each other. I'm standing close by waiting. And I hear the man start sniffling and putting his head down and see he is crying. She immediately gets her coat and leaves and this guy sat with his head down staring at his wine glass for the next half hour until my server tells me to just go home. Also, he left a $20 tip on a $640 tab. So don't feel too bad for him. I'm not a server. But I work in the kitchen and see what happens in the dining area, plus I speak to the servers every few minutes as they take out food, etc. Had a couple come in on Valentine's Day. Our restaurant sits about 50 people and we were booked for the night. So much so that we had tables capped at 1 hour before asking them to leave. About 2.5 hours before closing the couple comes in. Everything seems normal and they act like any other customers. They order food, have their starters and then mains. However, halfway through their main they start having an argument and causing a scene. One of the waiters asked them if they could be a little bit more respectful towards other customers. They relax for a bit and honestly seemed embarrassed about the whole situation. This is where it gets interesting. About 5 minutes later the guy just gets up and in complete silence walks out the front entrance. The woman stays there and completes her meal. This is about 1:45 minutes before closing time. After about 20 minutes of staring at an empty chair the woman asks for the bill. The guy who left never came back. The problem was, the woman didn't have her wallet or her phone and the guy drove her there, so no car either. After not being able to pay, she asked us to wait until her partner returns. We waited about 30 minutes before we had no other choice but to call the police. The police came and after about 10 minutes they escorted her out of the restaurant. Our manager felt awful about the situation and told the woman that she could return and pay the next day. I assume the police drove her home. And as promised she returned the next day. Paid the bill. Apologized about the situation and left. Honestly, don't really know what happened between the two or why they were arguing, but that guy pulled a really scumbag move and absolutely humiliated the poor woman. TL.dr, couple come into restaurant. Guy leaves after arguing. Woman has no way to pay and police are called. Not my table. But back in my Olive Garden days. We had a man who looked to be in his mid-20s tap his empty wine glass with a fork to call for attention of the surrounding strangers. Then get down on one knee with silver band in hand. And ask his girlfriend/date to accept this promise ring. She looked horrified start to finish. Not me. But a friend. Couple comes in at one of those restaurants with a set Valentine's Day menu and pre-arranged seating. While there, in the middle of the dinner, a much younger girl enters the restaurant. Ignoring the hostess and beelines right for the couple's table. She immediately causes a scene with. On the outs. Huh. Separated already? Huh. You fucking asshole. And by the way, the test is positive. She slams what my friend assumed was a pregnancy test on the table and storms out. Needless to say, the couple quickly escaped the restaurant. The wife crying. And no, they didn't pay their tab. Not really a disaster, but this guy came in and said he was waiting for his date. He stayed for 5 hours waiting and she never showed. He eventually ordered for himself and asked that I remove the other glass of water from the table. He said it was their first date. Seen a girl with her friend and her BF. Her date never showed up, so she started power drinking. She needed help walking out of the place. I was working as a waitress in a sushi restaurant and Valentine's Day was an all-hands-on-deck shift. This guy I had just started seeing wanted to go out. But I told him that working in food service, you never get Valentine's Day off and we just have to celebrate the day after or the weekend after. Nope. He got so upset that he went and asked a different girl out. Came to the restaurant I worked at on V-Day and sat in my section. He then proceeded to spend the entire evening making a fool out of himself and making his date uncomfortable as he tried to make me jealous. Needless to say, we didn't go out again. Ever. Not my story. But a coworker, which happens to be my cousin, told me this story. One day a guy enters the taco restaurant where we worked at. He was a waiter, so he goes on to bring the menu to the table. The guy, 20-ish, says he's waiting for someone. So he's gonna wait to order a full meal. But as waiters we are taught to insist a little more and sell something. So the guy finally orders the cheapest item on the menu, a small carne asada taco, just one. A few hours went by. The dude's date still hadn't arrived. And every 20 or so minutes he would order another one of those small tacos. Eventually the owner of the place, who is a really cool dude and has been a friend of my family for years, tells the waiters, look at this poor sucker. If the girl never arrives, I'll pay for everything he has ordered myself. So another hour and a half goes by and this dude finally gives up and asks for the check. He looked pretty sad, so as a waiter of his age, my cousin told him everything he consumed was on the house. He smiled and left good tips anyway. Stay strong guys, or gals, if she/he has you waiting that long. She/he's probably not worth it anyways. Okay. This was a disaster that was caused by the staff. We had an entire Valentine's party come into our high-end restaurant. There was an older couple, probably the matriarch and patriarch of the family group. There was at least 50 of them and they were having a blast. Halfway through their Valentine's dinner it is announced that it is mom and dad's 50th wedding anniversary as well. Everyone starts clapping and they ask us to bring out champagne for the party. We get several bottles and fill up some champagne flutes. But mom wants red wine. Another server, my friend, brings over a wine glass and I grab the bottle of wine. Just as my friend goes to put the glass down he fumbles with it and it starts to fall towards the table. There was nothing in it. So I didn't expect anything bad to happen. I was so wrong. The glass fell towards the table and turned. But my friend thought he would catch it with his tray. It hit the tray and the table at the same time and fucking exploded. It was the craziest wine glass shatter I've ever seen. Glass went everywhere. I started to nervously laugh and say, "We'll get you another glass." As soon as I say we'll, I notice mom bleeding. I mean profusely bleeding. The glass had hit her face and neck and she was bleeding a lot. At first I thought it would be okay. But after a few minutes we had to call the ambulance and have her transported out. I felt horrible for the family. I was a waitress many moons ago. And two couples spring to mind. The first were an older couple who were dressed nicely. They were polite and cordial to me, but not overly enthusiastic or friendly. They were at the table for a little over an hour and a half. And we didn't see them say one word to each other during that time. Every time I went over to their table, the atmosphere felt like I'd walk straight into an argument. But they weren't speaking, or looking at each other or anything. And it very quickly became awkward as fuck. The second couple was meant to be having a proposal dinner. The guy had rung to book a table, and had let us know he was going to propose during dessert. He'd given the ring to kitchen staff so we could bring it out with a cake. And he'd got some balloons and streamers too. Anyway, he walks in a couple of steps behind his partner, everyone has big grins for them both, but he grits his teeth and shakes his head, surreptitiously dragging his finger across his throat pantomime style. Great. Oh. And lucky me. They're seated in my section. It's obvious she was bloody furious with him about something. She spends the first half of the meal seething quietly, and the second having a constant pop at him. While she was in the loo, the manager made me double check he didn't want us to bring the ring out or anything. Fuck. No. Was his response. I felt really bad for him. She really was mean. Couple were fighting pretty much the whole time. Still unsure exactly what happened, but the woman was furious and the man was trying to stop her from causing a scene. When I approached the table she stopped me mid-sentence and told me they didn't know what they wanted so I should leave them alone. They argued for about 20 minutes while me and all the other servers watched. They eventually left when the woman stormed out. In a panic the man tipped me a 20 and ran out the door after her. Overall an enjoyable experience for me and the easiest tip I've ever made. When I asked a drunk guy how he wanted his steak cooked he said I like it raw and licked his lips at me. She left. He fell asleep at the table. It was awkward. My mom divorced my dad on Valentine's Day. Depends on who you ask as to whether or not this is a disaster. Place I worked at in college was a pretty nice establishment and a romantic destination because our view overlooked the entire city. It was also located at the top of a 5-star hotel that had several projectors cycling through what was going on around the hotel in the lobby. There was no footage from the gym or pool so it was relatively tame and never a privacy issue. Best you'd ever get were people eating, walking around the lobby or drinking at the bar. Anyway, guy walks in with his wife and asks to be seated in a secluded area. Well, you can imagine since it's busy and Valentine's Day we didn't have those. So he basically waited an extra hour to make sure he was seated in the back corner. It's my section. I take their drink order and take care of them though the husband was gone when I returned and I didn't see him go to the bathroom. Thinking nothing of it I go to the bar to get the drink and see all of my co-workers huddled around the monitor above the bar along with everyone else in there. Sure enough I found the husband as he was underneath the table going down on his wife. Only problem was the camera above their table had a clear view because it was situated in the corner. So now the entire hotel lobby can see as it cycles between us in the bar laughing. People checking in and our romantic couple dining on each other. More and more people start to notice and the bar fills up. This includes back of the house staff like dishwashers and the line cooks. Eventually it also brings out my manager who runs over to their table. Tells them what happened and they both run out mortified. But before they do the husband tries to stand up too quickly and flips the table, ruining all the plates while also exposing that his fly was down and his dick is out. He's yelling at my manager. The hotel manager, who came up when he saw it in the lobby, and security unzipped as he's escorted out. So yes, disaster for them, but man, they made a lot of people laugh that night. Thanks for watching.